Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today I'm going to show you how to mix your vocals in Pro Tools. You will get the project files for free. Just go to BusyWorksBeats.com, look at the top of the page, go to free downloads, and log in and you'll have access. All right, so in the Google Drive, it'll say, it'll be under project files under Pro Tools, and then you could look for this one. Okay, so what we're going to do is mix vocals from Carl. Shout out to Carl. We recorded up in Paramount Studios up in Hollywood, and on a Sony C800 mic into 1073 preamp into an 1176, just subtle compression. So that's the vocal chain going in. Okay, so let's hear it from scratch. So firstly, we need to identify what do we like about the vocal, what don't we like. So firstly, I like his vocal octave just sits better in higher frequencies for this mic. My vocals sounded a little more stressed because it didn't sound natural, because I was very airy and I forget why my voice was exhausted that day. So his sat perfectly in the octave to where it comes out more clear. His fundamental frequency of his voice is a little more clear. Like, you know, that frequency is more pronounced. Okay, so all we need to do really is the first step. Let me just give you guys the shortcut. Vocals, any track really comes down to compression, EQ. Everything else is just like different ways to do exciting things, like exciting your vocal, adding delay throws and reverbs. Like all that other stuff is just creative stuff. Most of the time you just need compression and EQ. Like that's it. You don't need to add 1,000 things. Maybe reverb to make your vocal sound like it's in a real space, but outside of that, you don't need a bunch of stuff. And that's a mistake I see a lot of people do. So let's add the first thing. Now I'm gonna use stock plugins here. This is my journey back into Pro Tools, so I'm sure I'll find a better way in the future. So using stock stuff, I like the BF76. That's the stock 1176 clone, I believe. They have Fairchilds, but you know, 1176 is just known for vocals and drums. So we're gonna load this up. So when you turn up the input, make sure you're also affecting the output. That way you're not just like cranking the volume up without any effect. So again, this works like backwards. You would think that a lower attack would mean that it's faster, but it's backwards. So I believe high values on the 1176 means that the attack acts faster, and same with the release. So we're going for faster times of the vocal because the vocal isn't very transient heavy. It's not like drums that are like, it's not how our vocals are. Our vocals are like, turn me up. It's not like, turn me up. Well, you know, that's very transient heavy stuff. But a lot of people have trouble with the transient and attack settings because they don't just think about what is sound and how is it shaped. Our vocal, as you can visually see actually, our vocal is not sharp sounding. It's not pointy. So in that case, we don't need to preserve a transient most of the time. So pull up your attack basically for this style of recording. This is not a how-to for everybody. I want to be careful how I speak because his vocal is just in a different pocket, a different vocal range. Normally I would do like, you know, RComp, RVox, those types of plugins, but because we're using stock stuff, we'll kind of see what they have. Now, usually when it comes to digital stuff, people will use 2 compressors, and that's because digital just sounds different than analog. I've had an analog compressor, an SSL compressor. It just sounds, or you know, Weiss, what was it, Mimas 1176, and it just sounded. You didn't need much. You could push it even 20 dB sometimes, and it sounded good. So with plugins, it's not the same results. So in this case, since I don't know all the Pro Tools made stuff, we're just gonna use another 1176. I give it beta, my money fade. So now we're getting that body, we're getting the fullness, I'll say, out of the sound. But a lot of that was just simple gain too, because we're not taking out a lot of dB. Now you can have one compressor attack the beginning of a sound and the other one take more of the body of the sound if you want to create curvature to it. I give it layer. Out of it, I give it favor. Out of it, I've been a nailer.
I keep it paid up, paid up. My money fade up. I keep on waiting on you. I won't go. I keep it made for. Dirty up. I do this. I know. Keep me up. I keep it lay up. Out of it.
So there's a point where you can push the compressor too far and it just sounds like it has like this ripping sound. So you don't want to push it too far to where like the breaths become aggressive. That's where I tend to back off on the compressor. But that's my style though.
I give it favor.
But right there would be a nice spot. So now let's add an EQ. It's a little difficult to understand EQ when you can't visually see it. So I'm going to visually show you, but then use stock plugin. So Fab Filter is just a goat for all things, for many reasons. Firstly, let's put this on natural phase. And then secondly, so in this sound, in short, your vocals have what's called a fundamental frequency. It's the lowest frequency your vocal cords produce, I meant to say. So as you see, his lowest frequency, like the hills in this vocal, are way up here at 300 hertz. Now my vocal sits way, way, way lower. If I had to do the same exact thing, let's see where my vocal sits. My lowest vocal sits all the way down at, what is this, 75 hertz. 75 hertz, mine goes all the way down to 75. Now his vocal, the way he's singing, is sitting way up at 300. So his lowest frequency is 200 hertz higher than mine. And so a lot of people think you could just copy and paste vocal settings for everybody's voice, and that's not how it works. So what we're gonna do is boost his fundamental frequency. Because that adds that body to the sound. It's his fundamental frequency. It's where all the sound starts. So I'm showing you where I'm going to boost, basically around 300. Now most people tell you to cut 200 to 400, but if you cut here, you're cutting out his entire fundamental performance. And it just sounds thinned out. It doesn't really have anything to it. So everything else below this point, he does hit a couple lower notes, but what we can do to be safe is just cut everything below 80 hertz because we know his vocals don't go down that low. We're going to cut at 24 dB per octave because anything that's below that point is not him singing it. It's like the room or, rumbles in the microphone or pops in the microphone. Pops in the microphone. It's stuff like that. So you don't really need that in the performance, so we can cut that out.
My money going, I'm gonna know it. I keep on there for you.
So what we're gonna do is do the same exact thing, but use the stock plugin. And let me make sure I get rid of the Fab Filter just in case so y'all don't get any errors. All right, so here's the Pro Tools stock EQ. And again, it's the same philosophy. We're gonna cut out everything below, let's say like 80 hertz, especially for his vocal. And we're gonna do about 24 dB per octave so that it's a very harsh cut and then you don't get anything coming in the microphone unnecessarily. That will muddy up the mix. Okay, so we're gonna boost around, let's say 200, I think it was 300.
I keep it auto, I keep it fired.
Now because his vocal goes up and down, it's not just all 300. I'm gonna type in 200 here and then make it a wider range. So it's affecting more than just 200. If you zoom in, you'll see that this goes all the way up to 1,000. It just goes, gradually down. So what we're gonna do is pull this in a little bit so it doesn't affect that many frequencies. Now this is a very big boost. But the thing is I'm boosting it below where his fundamental is. So it's gradually going into the fundamental. Let's go all the way back.
I give it made for. I do this. I know. Give me out. I give it lay up. Out of it. I give it favor. Out of it. I've been a nailor. I give it paid up.
Now the other frequencies we could boost up are 2K, 5K for like more pronunciation and presence.
My money fader.
We don't want to make this vocal too airy sounding, like you don't want to make it sound like that because then it's just all just air sounding.
I keep on waiting on you.
And that mic is very airy sounding to begin with.
I do this. I know. Give me out. I give it lay up. Out of it. I give it favor. Out of it. I've been a nailer. I give it paid up.
So this is my style of tone control. everybody has a different tone control style. That's what I like to hear. We're probably gonna go back and fix something about that. Vocal mixing is a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's not just like do this and it's done type of thing. It's usually a back and forth. What I forgot to add before all this actually is I do pitch correction first, and then I move into compression and EQ and all the other stuff. So let's add auto tune. I completely forgot to add auto tune. Auto tune, let's see. So auto tune's been acting weird for my Pro Tools. So let's see. I picked the mono one before, but that's been acting crazy. So let's do the stereo one. But if this acts crazy, then I'll go back to mono. I think we were in the key of B minor. And let me see, B minor. And the retune speed we're gonna have high. Now flex tune is what gives it that human type sound. Okay, so if you want it to sound more realistic, turn up flex tune.
I won't go, I give it made for. I do this, I know. Give me out, I give it layer.
It just makes the vocals sound tighter in the performance as far as the pitch control.
Tell me out.
Because it's like, tell me out. I'm not criticizing his voice. He's a crazy singer. His name is Carl V. I'm following him. And he's a friend of Travis Marsh. Shout out to him. So I'm going to turn this on and off.
Tell me out.
He was getting used to the song at that point. Now here's with autotune.
Tell me out. I swear this layer. Let's get it.
He was like, it's just a little sharp.
Tell me out. I swear this layer. Let's get it layer. I won't go. I give it made for. I do this. I know. Give me out.
Now, some people like that airy tone, that like sound. I'm not that big of a fan of the airy sound. That's the only thing about compression that I just need to get used to as far as digital compression, is that it pulls up so much air sometimes from the performance. I got to get used to that.
I give it made for. I do this. I know.
So if you still have areas you want to tame, you want to look at dynamic EQs. So I'm going to use Fab Filter just to show you what I would do in this case. Or you could use a multi-band. Let's do multi-band. I think actually, does Pro Tools have a multi-band? Let's see, I feel like they do. I feel like I've seen a multi-band compressor. If I can't find it, I think it's called Pro Multi-Band. If this isn't it, then I'll use the Fab Filter stuff. But Pro Tools, I haven't used it in so long. So we'll use this one. I'm pretty sure this is what I think it is. And we're going to solo different zones of the vocal and see what it sounds like. Now, there's nothing downloaded here, so that's nothing. So what I'm going to listen for is this energy buildup like that. It's very like right in your ear, and it's a lot of buildup.
I do this.
So here's the area where I think the air is being pronounced a little too much. So I'm probably going to tame this area just because I don't like the airy sound. This is not my thing. And that's a heavy air sound. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is tame that 300. So I'm just going to keep this soloed on this actual, what do you call it? This section of this take. Okay, so all I'm going to do is slowly lower the threshold until I start to hear this compressor. We have gain knobs, we have a threshold, we have the depth, which is basically how much compression, mix level. And so I'll mess with these two knobs first, then these other ones. And this little arrow is showing me how much threshold, or how far we're going down as far as threshold. So I can see once the signal passes this point, we're probably getting into compression area. Now, negative 20 dB I found to be like a common area to begin compression. It's just where most signal is around there. Now let's turn up the depth. Okay, so it looks like depth is outcome, so let's pull this down. Now I can't tell if we are soloing the before or after.
Give me out, I give it layer. Out of it, I give it favor.
So since I can't really hear this compressor, I'm going to exaggerate it by pulling the threshold down further. Okay, so now I can see when it's actually triggering, so I can keep my ear ready So now it's similar to C6 from Waves.
I do this, I know.
And now you can see it pull down in volume. We don't want it to pull down 10 dB. That's a little crazy. So let's pull this back.
Give me out, I give it layer. Out of it.
So now the issue, I guess, is that I've made the threshold so low that the entire signal is always going through the compressor all the time. I don't want it to always go through the compressor. I just want, when it builds up too much, to go through the compressor. So now I'm going to slowly pull back the threshold.
I give it favor.
And this tells me the amount of dB that we're taking out. So if you click here, we'll tell you, it says we're taking out 4 dB.
I do this, I know. Give me out, I give it layer.
And that just keeps that vocal feeling stable as opposed to being like all in our ear and like jumping out. That will just keep it linear. Even though we boosted there, it will keep it flat. And this adds a nice flatness to the vocal.
Out of it, I give it.
Next area I think we need to tame is this high end. So let's solo this. This is a really good compressor. I don't think I've used this before. So let's pull down that threshold and then mess with that depth. Again, I don't think we can hear it in solo.
Layer. Out of it, I give it favor. Out of it, I do this, I know. Give me out, I give it layer. Out of it.
So the goal of this compressor is just to keep certain areas of the vocal not feeling like it's making the whole vocal feel lopsided and like imbalanced. Let me make sure you guys can actually see the screen, because my last video, I recorded 30 minutes of just my head talking. I was like, wow, I have to re-record this. That's crazy. So that is how I would do the multi-band tone shaping.
I give it favor.
Now let me show you before and after what that would sound like, just to show you how that it adds that stability to the vocal. Here's before.
I do this, I know. Give me out, I give it layer. Out of it, I give it favor.
Everything's like jumpy and it's moving around.
Out of it, I do this, I know. Give me out, I give it layer.
Here's after.
Out of it, I give it favor. Out of it, I do this, I know. Give me out, I give it layer. Out of it, I give it favor. Out of it.
So, okay, so at this point, now we're gonna add the creative stuff. So the creative stuff is saturation, delay, reverbs. I'm gonna move a little bit quicker here because this is not for every vocal. But again, you will get the project files for free. Just go to busyworksbeats.com and sign up for free, and then go to the top where it says free downloads, and then look inside the Google Drive, and then go to where it says Pro Tools project files, and then find this one called vocal mixing. I think we're on day 1. It should be labeled day 1 vocal mixing, something like that. Okay, now that we have that out the way, let's create an analogy for creating creative effects. So I think of tracks like kids, and then the bus, like a bus going to a school. So in this case, the kid that we want to put on a bus is the vocal. So we're going to put the vocal kid on a bus. So we're going to go to where it says send. We need to send them to a bus. We're going to send them to bus number 1, 2. Not 112, 1, 2. Okay. So now the bus needs to go somewhere. It needs to go to a school. So we need to build a school. Let's hit Control-Shift-N. And we need to create a stereo track this time. And we want an aux input so that we can load up different effects. Let's do delay/reverb. All right, so now we have this new track called delay/reverb. This is the school, metaphorical school. So the school needs to import the bus. We need to tell which bus to go to this school. So go to the inputs, go to bus, and then find 1 and 2. So now bus 1 and 2 goes to the school called delay and reverb. So that's how I think about buses. So we can send a certain amount of the child. I know this sounds crazy because it's not possible yet with humans, but we could send a percentage of the child to bus 1 and 2. And we could also put the child in on different buses. Okay, so let's send it to bus 1 and 2, and let's send it over to delay and reverb. And you'll start to see signal down here. Now without plugins, this is just doubling the volume basically when you start adding more and more volume. Okay, so what we're gonna do is type in mod delay. I like mod delay. Some people like H delay, and there's another Pro Tools one, I forget what it's called. I like mod delay. So I'm gonna put this on sync mode. I don't know the BPM of this track, I forget. I think it's like 1 something, I don't know. So you see it's a little fast. I'm just gonna manually pull up the tempo. Okay, so I'm just kind of roughly going by ear. I don't remember the tempo. We don't really need it. It's just something to add taste to the sound. And now I'm going to pull up the depth, which adds like a pitch wobble, like that to the delay, so it's not so stagnant sounding. So you may say, okay, that's too much delay. What we can do is go back to the child, aka the track, and then tell it not to send as much energy to that bus. So now we're going to pull back. So now it's just, that delay is just filling in the gaps when the vocal's not performing. Let's add another plugin here called Deverb, one of my faves in Pro Tools, Deverb. Also, the Air plugins are really good in this DAW. So we're gonna go here, and so now when I send the vocal, I'm gonna exaggerate so you guys can hear. That reverb is impressive. So now we're just tucking the vocals. You can't even hear the reverb really and the delay unless I tell you about it. I give it favor. I do this. Now this vocal doesn't need aggression, but if it needed more harmonic filling, which is like cement on a sidewalk, harmonics are like the cement that goes in between the sidewalk slabs to fill it up. So if your vocal needs more filling, so to speak, you can add saturation. Now there's different types of saturation. So I'm just gonna show you different ones. Let's go to, we're gonna hit Control Shift N or Command Shift N. If you're on Mac, create a new track, bars. Go to aux input. We're gonna call this tape or reel or whatever. I should call it saturation. Let's call it tape or saturation, actually. Saturation. Now here I'm going to use different ones, but again, no worries if you don't have these plugins. So firstly, Fab Filter's Saturn 2 is really good. I learned how to use it in a different way. Shout out to Sage Audio. Go to Fab Filter Saturn 2 Stereo. Okay, very important. We're loading up stereo plugins here. What we're gonna do is first hear the tone, and then I'll show you how to make it more modulated. It's called, don't memorize what I'm telling you right now. It's not that important. So go to bus 1 and 2. So now remember, we need to tell this kid to go on the bus to different schools. So right now the tape saturation school doesn't have any buses going to its school. So we need to create another bus. Let's go to bus, let's go to send. We're gonna send the same kid, this time on bus 3 and 4. So it rides multiple buses. Okay, so we're gonna send it with this little fader here over to the tape saturation school. So we still haven't imported the buses into the school. Let's go to the input, go to bus and 3, 4. Okay, so now buses 3 and 4 go to the school called tape saturation. So now we can send a different portion of that vocal over to the tape saturation. So what I'll do so you guys can hear the effect of just the tape saturation, I'm gonna turn off sends 1 and 2, and I'm going to make this output none so that you only hear the tape saturation effect. For tape saturation to work, you have to push a lot of volume going into it. Sometimes people add tape plugins and they're like, I don't hear anything. It's because you didn't push hard enough into it. But when you push heavy into it, you need to make sure that your output volume is turned down, so you're not just like 20 dB louder for no reason. Okay, so I'm going to push this send going into it, but now you got to be careful because now the output volume is louder. So I'm going to turn, sorry for blowing your ears off. So I'm going to go to down here where it says output and turn this down 12 dB. Okay, because I'm going to push pretty heavily into it. So right now it's quiet until we push going into it. That's exaggerated. It sounds like Kanye. Okay. Let's pull it back. It just sounds really clean. For his vocal, because of the harmonics it creates, it just makes his vocal sound clean. You could do a lot more with segmenting of the things and all that. We don't need to get that deep. Let's just go to the modulation and see if this sounds good. Let's turn the mix level down. I've just learned this. I was doing it wrong the whole time. Turn this up, the modulation amount. So now every time it perceives signal, when you click here and lower the threshold, it will saturate the sound. So you could basically saturate only the top end of the sound if you want. So it's not getting the like, it's not saturating those, but it's saturating when he goes like, okay. So That makes it a little more dynamic and less buzzy all the time. Okay, so now we can open our sound back up. So that's what saturation sounds like, and that's what it does. So be careful when you push into a tape. You need to also monitor the output so you're not just blowing up the output volume. Okay, so let's go back. Because right now it's loud, so I need to go back to that tape. And we could just mute it. Let me mute it real quick, see how loud we were before. So I'm about 3 dB too loud. Also, you can use the volume fader right here, or the fader on the actual mixer channel. So let's do window. This is getting a little advanced, but hopefully you grabbed the concept. So now we can go to the tape saturation, just pull this down. Just find the sweet spot to where it's loud enough, but not like overly loud. Now for his vocal, this sounds supremely good because his vocal isn't low enough to where it's creating mud out of the saturation. Whereas my vocal, if you ran it through a saturator, you would create the muddy frequencies too. So you would have to deal with more stuff. But his vocal perfectly sits because of the octave he's singing in. So that's what I mean by everybody's vocal is going to be completely different. I do this, I know. Give me out, I give it later. Out of it, I give it favor. Let's turn on our delay. Out of it, I've been a nailer. I give it beta. Beta, my money fader. I keep on waiting on you. I do this, I know. Give me out, I give it later. Out of it, I give it favor. Out of it, I've been a nailer. Some people may say the saturation's too high still. You can pull it down even more. I give it beta. Beta, my money fader. I keep on waiting on you. I might keep waiting, another later. I'm on a thing for you. My money going, I done it nowhere. I keep on thing for you. I keep it out of sweat is later. Let's get it later. I won't go, I keep it made for. Now, one more thing that I found, it was almost by accident, but I added a Fab Filter. This is more like people who have this plugin. I understand Fab Filter stuff is not free, or not cheap, I meant to say. So let's add a Pro Q3. Basically, this allows me to do stereo and mid information for those who understand what I'm saying. Mid is basically the combination of what your left ear and right ear hears at the same exact time, same volume, same pitch, same everything. That's what middle means. Sides is the difference between those two signals. So if I have something subtly different on the left than the right, then that's what the side information is hearing. In short, I'm going to double click this, make this a side point, and then boost up the side. And you're going to hear the reverb really sing in this area. I did it one time by accident, but it sounded great. I do this, I know. I'm doing this on the delay and reverb area. Give me out, I give it later. Out of it, I give it favor. Out of it, I've been a nailer. I give it beta. Beta. Let me solo it just so we can hear it. And then we'll boost it. So let me turn it off and then turn it on. Tell me I swear this later. So here's before. Let's get it later. I won't go, I give it made for. Here's after. I do this, I know. Give me out, I give it later. Out of it, I give it favor. Out of it, I've been a nailer. I give it beta. It just adds this like wall of like thin sound, but it sounds good that it's there. Tell me I swear this later. Now it's a little exaggerated, but I like the sound. It just sounds good. Let's get it later. I won't go, I give it made for. I do this, I know. Give me out, I give it later. Out of it, I give it favor. Out of it, I've been
I give it paid up. Paid up. My money fade up. I keep on waiting on you. I might get later. Another letter. I'm on a thing for you. My money go.
And there you have it. To download these project files for free, go to busyworksbeats.com. It's completely free to hop in, and then go to where it says free downloads at the top of the website. I want to thank Carl for the vocals. I want to thank Travis Marsh for the session. I want to thank Andrew Grossman for being a dope engineer, and everybody else who was with us that day. Thank you guys. Subscribe if you're new. We're going to have more Pro Tools stuff, so subscribe if you're new. Like the video. Peace. Tell a friend. Peace.